Somewhere right now, a person is holding lunch with both hands, two pieces of bread, something squishy in the middle, maybe cheese, maybe meat, maybe peanut butter, maybe one lonely piece of lettuce pretending it has a job. The person takes a bite, crumbs fall down, and nobody thinks this is strange. But it is strange, because this food is not named after bread, it is not named after lunch, it is not named after meat, cheese, hunger, school, picnics, or the small panic of opening a lunchbox and seeing banana touching everything. It is called a sandwich, and sandwich was a person, sort of. Actually, it was a title, which means one of the most normal foods on Earth is walking around with a fancy rich person title on it. That is a weird thing to put in a backpack. Before we get to the Earl, look at the food itself. A sandwich is very simple. It is food hiding between bread. That is basically the whole machine. One bread roof, one bread floor, a middle full of things that would rather escape. Tomato slides, sauce drips, lettuce folds itself into a tiny wet blanket. Meat hangs out the side like it is trying to leave the meeting, and the bread says, "No, stay in there." A sandwich is not just food, it is a food trap. It lets a human carry lunch without carrying a bowl, a plate, a fork, a spoon, a chair, a table, and one adult saying, "Please sit down while you eat." You can eat it at school, you can eat it at work, you can eat it in a car, on a bench, at a desk, in a park, on a train, or while standing in the kitchen like a very tired person. The point is, the sandwich moves with you. That matters more than it sounds. Most food wants you to stop. Soup says, "Get a bowl." Spaghetti says, "Good luck." Rice says, "I am everywhere now." A sandwich says, "Hold me and keep walking." Very useful, very suspicious. Because once you notice what a sandwich does, you start seeing the same idea everywhere. A taco is doing it. A wrap is doing it. A pita is doing it. A bun around a burger is doing it. Even a piece of bread used to scoop up food is doing the same basic job. The bread becomes a tool, not a metal tool. An edible tool, which is the best kind of tool because when the tool is done helping, you eat the tool. That is efficient. That is also slightly rude to the tool. For most of history, this kind of idea was too useful to belong to one person. If people had bread and people had food, someone eventually had the same thought. What if I put this on that? Then a second thought arrived. What if I fold that around this? Then a third thought arrived. Now my fingers are less disgusting. That is civilization. Not all of it, but a surprising amount. So no, the first sandwich-like food probably did not appear because one brilliant man stared at bread and unlocked lunch. People had been using bread as plates, scoops, wraps, and edible handles for a very long time. That part is not the mystery. The mystery is the name. Why did this everyday food end up with the word sandwich? For that, we need 18th century London. Picture a room with candles, cards, small tables, rich men, smoke, drinks, and a lot of people taking themselves very seriously. Everybody is dressed like their clothes have rules. The wigs are large, the names are longer than the sandwiches. And somewhere in this world was John Montagu, the 4th Earl of Sandwich. That was his title. He was not a sandwich man in the modern sense. He did not have a tiny shop with a chalkboard menu. He was a powerful British politician and a nobleman. He served in major government jobs, including First Lord of the Admiralty, which means he was connected to the Royal Navy. So yes, the food in your lunchbox is linked to a man who had opinions about ships. History is not normal. The story most people know goes like this. The Earl was playing cards. He did not want to stop. Stopping would mean leaving the table, using a knife and fork, eating a proper meal, and acting like hunger was more important than the little rectangles in his hand. Unacceptable. So he asked for beef between two pieces of toast. That way, he could eat with one hand and keep playing with the other. No fork, no plate, no greasy fingers on the cards. The meat was trapped. The game survived. A rich man had defeated lunch. According to the famous version, other people saw this and wanted the same thing. They supposedly asked for the same as sandwich. Then the name stuck. Sandwich. At first, this sounds like a perfect origin story. One hungry man, one card table, one beef problem, one solution. Then boom, lunch has a name. But real history likes to poke holes in neat stories. Rude, but helpful. The famous gambling story mostly comes from a French writer named Pierre-Jean Grosley, who wrote about English life in the 1700s. He described a minister who stayed at a gaming table for 24 hours and ate beef between pieces of toast without leaving the game. That is a great image. It is also a little too perfect. A man gambling for a whole day, surviving on beef toast while inventing the name of lunch? That sounds like history wearing a funny hat. And there is another complication. The word sandwich was already being used in 1762 by the historian Edward Gibbon, who wrote about fashionable men eating cold meat or a sandwich in a coffee room. That does not destroy the Earl story. but it does mean the word was already moving around London society. So the name may not have popped into existence in one magical bite. It may have spread through clubs, coffee rooms, card tables, and people copying what fashionable men ordered. That is less clean. It is also more believable. People copy food all the time. One person orders something, another person sees it, then someone says, "I want that." Then the cook has to make more of the thing. Then the thing needs a name, because pointing at another person's dinner is not a good long-term system. So the same as sandwich becomes a sandwich. The important part is this. The Earl probably did not invent the idea of putting food in bread. That idea is older, bigger, and much more human than one fancy man with cards. But his name helped label the version that became fashionable in English. He may not have invented the tool, he became the sticker on the tool, and that sticker spread everywhere. That is how ordinary things sometimes get their names. Not because the name is fair, not because the first person got credit, not because the best cook wrote it down. Sometimes a name sticks because the right person in the right room eats the right thing while other people are watching. Very scientific, very unfair, very lunch. And once the sandwich had a name, it became easier to travel. A named thing can be ordered. A named thing can be written in a cookbook. A named thing can be sold in a shop. A named thing can be packed, copied, changed, and argued about by people who suddenly care very deeply about whether a hot dog counts. We are not going into that. That is a different food courtroom. The sandwich kept spreading because it solved the same old problem again and again. People are busy. Hands are useful. Food is messy. Bread is patient. Put the messy thing inside the patient thing, and the human can keep moving. That is why the sandwich belongs in school bags, work lunches, train stations, gas stations, picnics, kitchens, cafes, and tiny plastic boxes with one grape rolling around like it pays rent. The Earl makes the story funny, but the sandwich itself makes the story last. Because it is not really about fancy people, it is about a tiny daily need. I am hungry, I am busy, I do not want soup in my pocket. Help, bread helped. So the next time you see a sandwich, do not just see lunch. See a small invention that humans probably discovered many times. In many places, because food kept being annoying and bread kept being useful. Then remember the weirdest part. This normal, floppy, crumb-dropping lunch is named after a powerful 18th century man whose title came from a place called Sandwich. A town became a title became a man became a food, and now a kid can open a lunchbox, stare at 2 slices of bread, and accidentally hold a tiny fancy British title with cheese in it.